Inside the Garage on WFRV Plus. I am Indiana Shills. Unfortunately, Blake is not here to join us, but we do have a special guest to join us today. We would like to welcome in NASCAR driver Natalie Decker. Natalie, oh, that is the wrong button. Here we go. This one. Perfect. How you doing, Natalie? Thank you so much for taking the time to be on our CTV show. It does mean a lot to us. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. It's really exciting to have a Wisconsinite who has raced in NASCAR and, grew up around racing, just doing so many different things. I mean, I have some notes here. It says you began karting. You won 4 championships in 2 years before moving up to stock cars at the age of 12. You won the 2012 Superstock Championship at Marshfield Motor Speedway and earned ARCA Midwest Tour Rookie of the Year in 2013. So, Natalie, let's go ahead and start with some of the questions. You grew up in Eagle River, which is in the Northwoods. How did your life in the Northwoods kind of shape your passion for racing?
Well, I would have to say why I fell in love with racing is totally because my dad's side of the family. So him and his 3 brothers, there's 4 Decker boys, and they all race snowmobiles, dirt bikes, dirt cars, like you name it, jet skis. They've raced it. They've done it all. And so they're very heavily involved in the motorsports industry. And then my parents owned the World Championship Snowmobile Derby. So I grew up around snowmobile racing. I just loved the sport of racing. It didn't matter what it was. I always enjoyed going to a snowmobile race, a dirt bike race, a go-kart race. It didn't matter. But growing up, with that being said, my dad loved racing. So he always had NASCAR on our TV on the weekends. Mm-hmm. And I told him at a very young age, I was like, that's what I want to do. Dad, I want to race cars. And he wanted me to race snowmobiles. Obviously, he owned the track. He's a world champion himself. His name in the snowmobile world is one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, so it's right up there. Right?
So he really wanted me to race snowmobiles. And I think I was 4 years old. He bought me the sled. He bought me the outfit, like the whole thing. Every day after school, I'd practice. He was so excited. My brother was already racing snowmobiles and all my cousins and everything. So, I was the last, cousin and the last kid to be here to race. And I took the green flag. I went 10 feet. I took my helmet off and I told my dad I was done. So fast forward, when I told him I wanted to race in NASCAR a few years later, he was like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, right.
But he finally, he did not believe me, but he finally gave in. And for my birthday, my 9th birthday, my mom and my dad surprised me with a purple go-kart. And I was hooked ever since I saw that go-kart sitting in the shop. I was just so thrilled that they got me that. I'm pretty sure I fake passed out. I was so excited. I was like, this is the best birthday ever.
Right. You were probably super stoked about that. And then, so you said, your father's he would have NASCAR on the TV. Was there any specific driver that you really enjoyed watching the most growing up?
Yeah, I never specifically had a favorite for any reason they won at my favorite track or they're the previous championship. The reason why this person is my favorite driver growing up. Now I have different favorite drivers, but I still love this driver. He currently doesn't race anymore because he's my dad's age, but was Mark Martin. And the reason why is because way back when the scoring wasn't always on the side where you could see first through 20th constantly. It would scroll across the top of the screen. And my favorite number was 4. And 4th place had already scrolled by. And I was like, okay, well, whoever's in number 14th position, I'm going to root for them this weekend. And it was I asked my dad, I'm like, who's that driver in number 14th position? He was like, oh, that's Mark Martin. And then he told me this long story on how he wanted to go asphalt racing. He was a big dirt late model guy. And he got a hold of Mark Martin, drove down to his shop, bought his asphalt late model. And when he walked into the shop, they realized that they were the same exact height, same exact size. My dad didn't have to do anything to the car. So he bought the car. He was so excited. And then he told me he really sucked at asphalt racing and wrecked that car and stuck to dirt after that.
That's awesome.
So that's how he became my favorite driver.
Yeah, Mark Martin's, a heck of a career. Unfortunately, just never was able to, push through for that championship. But probably one of the best to never win a championship in the NASCAR Cup Series, or back then it was called the Winston, all the name changes and stuff like that.
Can't keep up.
Yeah, I know. And now the Xfinity's changing to O'Reilly. It's every other year there's a whole new thing. And whatever. So, you've raced everything from late models to ARCA and the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Which transition do you think was the toughest, and what do you think was the most rewarding?
Ooh, well, the toughest transition was not going from a specific car to car. It was racing at short tracks for my whole entire life. And, showing up to Daytona, Talladega as a driver, that was so much fun. I could understand it. The drafting took a while to figure out. And obviously, I'm still learning. I have not been in that many super speedway races, but it's something that I could really comprehend and understand. So that transition wasn't hard, but the transition going to mile and a half. So that was so difficult. So when I was racing in the ARCA series, it was my first couple mile and a half races. I just couldn't figure it out. I didn't fully grasp how much the car leaned on the air, and it was aero dependent. And when you would get behind someone in dirty air, it was really hard for me to figure that out. And that was the biggest transition. So going forward, if I were to ever be able to land that full season sponsorship and do a full season in trucks or Xfinity, that my goal would 100% be to conquer mile and a halves, because to this day, still there's a few of them that I really struggle at.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, you did make history in 2020 with a 5th place finish in the Truck Series, best result by a female driver. You then debuted in 2021 in the Xfinity Series, continuing part-time until, there was some sponsorships that were unapproved and stuff like that. But like you said, it's just really NASCAR is about being able to secure those sponsorships. So what's kind of the toughest thing about getting those sponsorships and then getting them approved by NASCAR?
The hardest part is every driver needs to have the money to go racing.
Right.
It costs money to go racing, and it costs a lot of money to go racing, even at a local level. To go out there and dominate at a local level is still very, very expensive. But the hardest part is, a lot of the times fans or other people that find out what I do for a living, and I'm like, oh, I race cars. They're like, oh, it must be so easy finding sponsorship. You're a young, cute girl. That must be the easiest part. And it doesn't matter female, male, it does not matter about any of that. Even how much success you have or how many starts you have. Overall, finding the sponsorship is the absolute hardest part for everybody. And what you have to essentially do is go to companies and ask for an insane amount of money and show them what you can offer them and what you can, do for them with that sponsorship. And I always tell, my team is my family. So my mom and my dad and my husband, Derek, and my Auntie Sue, who grew up with me going to all the short track races and traveled everywhere. So we're a small little team and it's all family. And when I tell my husband, especially when we're getting we feel defeated and we're oh, this isn't going anywhere. We really wanted to sell, let's say Martinsville, and we couldn't find anyone to sponsor that race. And we're upset, is I tell him, I'm what if someone told us today that all you need is 1,000 no's before you get one yes? Would you be really excited to hear no? Because you're just that much closer to getting the yes. So I always try to remind ourselves, okay, you are going to hear a lot of no's. You are going to get down. It sometimes is going to feel like it's not going anywhere, but we just have to remind ourselves to keep working towards it, because we have been doing this for a long time now. I've been racing in NASCAR since I was 18, 19 years old, starting in ARCA. So I'm 28 now. That's almost 10 years.
Yeah, and you dedicate a lot of your life to, the sport and stuff like that.
And a lot of the fans think, that it comes from family money. And I've 100% raced off of sponsorship since I started racing in NASCAR. I was very fortunate enough to, when I first got my start racing at go-karts and local levels, my dad and his racetrack and a lot of his partners were able to help, because it's still expensive, but it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars every weekend like it is in NASCAR.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, all right, we're going to head to our first commercial break. When we come back, Natalie and I will talk a little bit more about being a woman in NASCAR and how being a trailblazer can really inspire the next generation. But until then, stay tuned. We'll be back after these commercial breaks. Welcome back to Inside the Garage here on WO4V Plus. I'm still joined by Natalie Decker. Natalie, it's great to have you on the show still. Again, appreciate you taking the time. A little bit about women in motorsports. So you've been a trailblazer in a sport that really hasn't always had a lot of women on the national level. What does that responsibility sort of feel like?
Wow. Okay. Responsibility. I don't know. Other than like when I first started racing, like go-karts and all that, it was usually just me and maybe one other girl at the track. And it didn't feel like not normal in the moment because like there was no one ever really saying anything to me. Social media wasn't really big yet. Mm-hmm. And so it just felt like I was living out my dream. I was like, this was my passion. And I was doing what I loved. And I was friends with all my competitors. Yeah. Most of them were males. There's a few other females. But now when I go back to those like little go-kart tracks or like here at Millbridge, we live really close to it. It's a local dirt track near where we live in North Carolina. It's pretty famous, actually, little dirt track. Yeah, and when we go there, there's hundreds of girls now. So just to see that shift, like the shift from when I was a little girl, 9 years old racing to now when I go to the track and see other little 9-year-old girls, there's so many of them. And that's so exciting to see that shift because as the years go on, it's just going to slowly keep feeding into the bigger series and, eventually into NASCAR. So like, I love to see that. And it was, it wasn't anything, like I said, like it didn't feel unnatural and unnormal when I first started. But once I started making my way into the ARCA series and racing in NASCAR and social media now is a huge part of everybody's life. Yeah, and I started to gain a lot more followers and a lot more fans. Then I was like, okay, okay, this is a little different.
Yeah, for sure. I know there's a lot of up and coming younger women in the sports. Just Isabella Robusto is big in ARCA right now for Venturini, and then you got Amber Backlund, and we talked about Catherine Legg. Made a couple of Cup Series starts this year, actually having a really good run, finishing in the top 20 in one of the races. You said that Danica Patrick was kind of a connection that you have made throughout the years. What's been your relationship like with Danica, and how has she kind of helped you in times of need in NASCAR?
Well, it's so wild because like I said, with my dad and his racing background, my dad raced against Danica's dad. So Danica's dad comes from the snowmobiling background as well. And the more I'm involved in NASCAR or in the motorsports industry down here in North Carolina, there's so many connections going back to snowmobile racing. Like so many people I keep meeting are all connected to something in snowmobile racing. I'm like, what a small world. But yeah, right. So the Patricks, that family, they have been, especially TJ Patrick, Danica's dad, he's a good friend of my dad's, and they've just, always try to help guide us in the right direction and give us advice and, just share their experience with us so that we're prepared for what our experience is going to be like when we started in the ARCA series.
For sure. What do you think some misconceptions people have about being a woman in racing that you'd love to set the record straight on?
Well, I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions because, on my social media, I'm just going to use an example. Like, Monday morning, I might be posting a picture of me in a bikini on a beach. And then Thursday night, I'm testing at a track. And I feel like sometimes some of the NASCAR fans can't grasp that I like both. Like I love being a female. I love being very feminine.
You got more stuff to do than just racing.
Yes. Sure. Like I love so many things, and that doesn't take away from the drive that I have to be a race car driver. Like I'm a mom now. I love being a mom. It's a dream of mine to be a mom, and now I'm living that dream. But that's not taking away from my dreams of being a NASCAR driver. I love, dressing up really cute and going out to Vegas. We were just there with my best friends. They just got married, and I love sharing my experience out in Vegas and all the dresses I wore every single night. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. It was an iconic weekend, and I love sharing that with my fans. And I feel like some of the fans that don't really know me but are fans of the sport, and then they come across my page, I feel like the misconception is like she doesn't take racing seriously because I'm showing all of my life. And so it can probably be confusing to them, but if I could tell them to their face, I wish I could, because I think then they would believe me.
Yeah, no, you got a lot of keyboard warriors online, that's for sure, especially being a female in NASCAR and stuff like that. So you had one start this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. That was at Daytona. You took 22nd, but you were able to work with Steve Addington, who actually worked with Tony Stewart. What was your experience like with Steve and just in general in Daytona this year?
First, I want to say I did not, going into it, know exactly who my crew chief was going to be. Since I'm a part-time driver, I'm coming in and just racing like, a third car or whatever for the team. Crew chiefs get switched around a lot for opportunities like I had right there. And when I met Steve, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I love this guy. He was amazing. I told myself if I could put together a season in the next couple of months, I wanted him to be my crew chief. I'm like, whatever I can do to make that happen. Well, now he's full-time with DGM on their full-time car. But, maybe 2027, I can work with him. I really like him. My experience with him, he was calm. He made me feel confident. Just everything I needed to hear from a crew chief as a driver. Like, he was feeding that information to me, off the track and on the track during the race. And, it's so crazy. I was 6 months postpartum when I went and did that race, and which is wild in itself.
I mean,
that is crazy. And so the one thing is I kind of forget like how that race went, because it just happened so fast. Yeah. And then when I go back and I try to remember and reflect on it so I can be prepared for my next coming race, which will hopefully be at Daytona in February. The opener Xfinity race. That's a goal of mine, to be at there. And I'm pretty sure we're close to making that happen. But anyways, when I go back and I reflect on it, I'm like, we had a really good run, and we were starting P11 with like a green, white checkered, and coming to the green flag, we lost fuel pressure and I had to pull down pit road. And I'm like, I forget that happened just because the race was going so well. I felt so good in the moment, like throughout the whole race, even though that like really crappy thing happened and I had to come down pit road and we didn't get to finish the race. Like, I feel like we should have, like the position we should have been in. But like looking back at it, it was so much fun. I'm so glad. I kept telling everyone while I was pregnant with Levi, I said, I don't want my first race back to be at Daytona. I don't want my first race back to be at Daytona. But I must have said that way too many times to where God was really confused, thinking that he wanted my first race back to be at Daytona. But it all worked out. It was perfect. It was amazing. And I couldn't have had it any other way. I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
Yeah, and Wawa was the sponsor of the race, and then also sponsored your car as well. Yeah, and there's a picture of you and Levi that was just on the screen during driver intros. You got to bring Levi out. How cool was that moment, just to be able to bring your son out there and kind of show the NASCAR world, like, hey, I got a son now. I'm still killing it, stuff like that. How did that feel? It
was really cool, and there was a bunch of kids like on the stage before the driver intros. And, Levi was only 6 months old. It's not like he's in daycare or going to school or anything. So he doesn't get to see a lot of kids. So when he was on stage, there's music going and fun lights. And there were so many kids. And he was like, this is crazy. He loved it. He loved seeing all the kids and all the drivers in the fire suits. Like, he loves race cars. He loves fire suits. So I'm so glad that I got to bring him on stage. I remember right before the driver intros, I was actually feeding my son and he spit up all over me. And I'm like, this is, I said this in an interview somewhere. It could have been with Fox and Friends. I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure what interview, but I said, I'm going to be the only driver out there with spit up on my fire suit. And it happened right before driver intros. And then I was debating if I should even take him or not, because he was so little. He's only 6 months old and it was so hot out. But I'm like, you know what? I have to, because I need to have this memory. I need to have the photos. I need to have the videos.
Yeah, and the photos are great. I mean, you're just smiling ear to ear.
Yeah,
I mean, it looks
he was having the time of his life. And then I get off the stage and we do like a parade lap on the track with, all the drivers. And I didn't want to take my baby on the parade lap. And I'm looking for my husband. I can't find him anywhere. And the officials are like yelling at me to hurry up to go for this parade lap. And then the Wawa sponsor, the guy who was in charge of the whole thing, he was there. His name's Kevin. And he looks at me, he's like, give me the baby, I'll find Derek. So I like hand my baby off to my sponsor. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Just a lot of fun times down in Daytona for sure in 2025. So, you mentioned in the email heading back home to Eagle River for Christmas. What's the first thing that you absolutely have to do when you get home?
Oh, well, there's a lot of things. To be honest, we need to hit all the restaurants and bars. Like that's our number one priority. There's nothing like being in the Midwest and like a cute little town where I grew up. It's a cute little town. The bars and restaurants and like the bar food, like in like Charlotte doesn't have anything like that. It's so good. So that's our priority usually right when we get there. And then well, really, like a lot of my family is still in Eagle River. I have a lot of aunt, uncles, and cousins, and I really love to try to get together with everyone right away. And a lot of them all have kids. So it's now that I have a baby, it's really fun to all hang out and have all of our kids together.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're going to hit our final commercial break. When we come back, Natalie and I will wrap up the show. But until then, stay tuned after these commercial breaks. Welcome back to Inside the Garage here on WFRV Plus. We have special guest Natalie Decker here with us. And I hit the wrong camera again, man. I just can never. Blake's usually the one touching the buttons here. I don't know where everything is, but whatever. Anywho, we'll rapid fire a couple questions here. What's kind of a typical race week preparation look like for you?
Oh man, there's a lot of different things, but when I get to the track, I usually like to get with my team right away. They're usually going through tech or the car's usually already unloaded and stuff, but I like to just get with my team, see my car, say hi to everyone. And then I'm very fortunate enough, my parents are there with the motorhomes. Then I like to go back to the motorhome.
Yeah, that's always awesome.
Relax, hang out with my family. I mean, that's why I fell in love with racing in the first place, is because we did it together as a family. So and then, when I go back to the hotel, I like to kind of just like really think about, my past races at that track that I've done in the past, maybe rewatch last year's race, have a good meal. Maybe I'm doing a meet and greet. So preparing for that takes a lot of energy, sitting there for a couple hours and having conversations.
Your smiling face and meeting people. It definitely takes a lot of preparation.
But I love it. It's one of my favorite parts about the weekend is meeting all of the fans. They're incredible. And a lot of the times I'm seeing people, on repeat, like I've already seen them a couple times and like we have inside jokes and stories we need to tell and like all this stuff. So like that's the best part. And then after the race is over, sometimes I leave that night and go back home. Or I stay the night in the town we're in, and then we go back home and we just start preparing and prepping for the next race.
For sure. Any rituals or routines before getting into the car?
None. I'm not superstitious.
No, not at all. Okay, the national anthem, always pretty cool to just stand out there, and now you get to do it with Levi and then Derek and the rest of your family. So, what are some behind the scenes side of racing that most fans don't see or know about?
Oh, the meetings, the Zoom calls, and the planning with the sponsors. And when we have this crazy big idea that we start with, and we have to like keep bringing it in and figuring out how we're going to make that happen and all the prep that goes into it just behind one meet and greet. Like my team is so hands-on. I'm on almost every single Zoom call down to the details of how the show car is going to get to the meet and greet. So there's always a lot of meetings, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of planning. That's, I would say, like behind the scenes, not driving part that I feel like a lot of people might not know about.
For sure. And then one final question for you before we wrap up the show here. What is 2026 going to look like? I know you can't predict the future, but you said February, you're hoping to get back to Daytona.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
For me, my goal is to do 5 to 10 Xfinity races. And then my husband, this is not announced yet, but I'm just going to say it. He bought a dirt car. So we're going dirt racing as well. So I keep telling everyone my husband's the NASCAR wife and I'm the dirt wife.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Natalie, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to catch up with another Wisconsinite like myself. I mean, it's been just lovely to have you on the show, and really, really interesting to get the behind the scenes look of what it's like as a NASCAR racer, especially from Wisconsin. There's not too many of them, but you got Matt Kenseth, Parker Retzlaff, Ty Bujeski, all the good names, and you could go ahead and add Natalie Decker to that list as well. So we're gonna wrap up the show here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Natalie, any final words?
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. And hopefully when I'm announcing my Daytona race for next year, we can talk again.
Yes. We'll try to have you back. Hopefully we'll be talking about Daytona and a little bit about sponsorship and what we're going to go out about there. So thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.